and fire, but the idea was by Major General Louis E. Hibbs. Because of a statement made during the famous meeting held at Casablanca by President Franklin Roosevelt and Winston Churchill, vowed to make our enemies bleed and burn in expiation of the crimes against humanity. We were the instruments of that bleeding and burning process. Camp Landing saw the birth of the 63rd on June the 15th, 1943, and shortly thereafter the 63rd was transferred to Camp Van Dorn for the purpose of completing their training. Camp Van Dorn, Mississippi earned its miserable reputation as the worst example of an Army installation in the United States. In Van Dorn, Mississippi. Reviewing the wax barracks and the PX in the upper part, we see Van Dorn's Service Club number 1. This is an area where most of the GIs had a lot of fun, dancing with the girls from Vicksburg and many other cities that surrounded Van Dorn. Here we can see CT Red, 253rd, 861st Rec Hall. This is on 12th Street, and we can see the 861st officers' quarters. Here we see a very familiar sight, a PX, and again, the Rec Hall. Some of the men from Regimental Headquarters, 253, and right across the street, the movie house where many of us went at night to see some of the latest shows. Looking up at the field artillery where the water tower was, and right across the street from there, we will notice that is part of A Company, 1st Battalion. Here we see the open area where many of the celebrities came to entertain the troops, Joe Louis, etc. And we can see the area right down where the incinerator was, and some of the tar paper shacks, the 2 pot-belly stoves, one at each end, where we used to feed coal. This is Sunday afternoon, card game in progress, and here's a fella goofing off from KP. Looking across E Company, 253, and looking around towards H Company, looking at G Company area, latrine, and Headquarters 2nd Battalion, latrine. Remember when we used to scrub the duck boards and keep the fire going for hot water? Here we are, one of the G Company cooks. As Stelma and La Rosa, 37 millimeter anti-tank gun. These were the men from the anti-tank company. Again, looking across the parade ground, the CT Red. Here we see some of Captain Pilla's guerrillas, E Company, just coming back from their shots. Sergeant Harris, Communications Headquarters Company, 2nd Battalion. This is GI time. Remember when we used to GI the barracks? Well, this is some of the men. Sergeant Oglesby, Golubsky, Wayne Lawrence, Pakin, Bernard. Yes, they're getting ready. It's time to GI the barracks. Sergeant Kennedy, Argoncillo. Looks like they're getting ready for chow again. Sergeant Harris and the boys playing in the background. Tarangelo from New York. Sergeant Boyle from Philadelphia. One of the many first sergeants that we went through. It's time for chow. And here we see the boys standing in line with their mess kits and canteen cups, looking them over, making sure they're clean. And yes, there are boys on KP, and there are those that are cooking for Headquarters Company. It's chow time, and they're scurrying around the kitchen. Here we see a letter from home. Fishburne, some of the men from Anti-Tank, A&P platoon, regimental headquarters. They used to come down and sit in and eat. And they're all patiently waiting in line. This is the tent we ate in. This is where we used to eat our meals. Sergeant Gay, broken from a first sergeant, one of the over-the-hill boys. Yes, the boys are patiently waiting. It's chow time. We're hungry. We're waiting for the first sergeant. As you know, you don't eat chow until the first sergeant gets there. And as the famous quotation goes, here he comes now. First in line. And yes, gentlemen, this is what we had to eat that day. Some of the famous chow that they threw into your mess kit. Ah, yes. Fond memories. Mail call, the best part of the day. Letters from home, from the wife, from the girlfriend. This is Sergeant Kennecke and PFC Fishburne. Fishburne wants a pass to Centerville. Sergeant says, you shine my shoes, put a good shine on them, you'll get that pass. He says, I'm doing the best I can. You know, these are muddy boots, and it's hard to put a good shine on them. Well, I'm trying the best I can. It's not good enough, and that's your reward. Yes, CT Red. Many memories. This is where Sergeant Biggs used to give out the different equipment, materiel, looking across the parade ground towards H Company. And, of course, many outfits had mascots. Filling the gas stoves for chow. A KP's job. How many of you filled many of those? There's one of those over-the-hill boys again. Fella from H Company. Here comes Sergeant Kennecke. He has to go after one of those over-the-hill boys. He says, you know, when I catch up with one of them, this is what I'm going to do. I said, you can't shoot him. He said, I'll hit him over the head. And here are some of the boys getting ready to go on to a field exercise. They got their climbers and their equipment to go out into the field. And so off and running we go. Sergeant Green, Communication Headquarters, Lieutenant. Sergeant Oglesby, Sergeant Turvo, and here's G Company, getting ready for chow. You might think that's all we did was to eat, but that was the 3 squares a day. And here we are cleaning those mess kits, scrubbing them, making sure they're clean. Hot water, soapy water, clean water. This is Anti-Tank A&P platoon barracks. And here we are in front of the orderly room. This is where we used to get our passes. Looking back towards G Company. How we used to dance in the old rec hall. Looking down the orderly street there, we can see the parade grounds again in the distance. H Company in the distance. And boy, it was another hot day in Van Dorn. How hot was it? Oh, it was awfully hot. Beastly hot, as Kelly used to say. I used to strangle him, he said. He says, if I get a hold of him, this is what I'm going to do. But he says, here's a friendly reminder. He says, if I get a hold of him, this is what I'm going to do. Kelly says, oh, yeah? And here we see some of the boys from 253, 254, 255 and Division Headquarters. They're all up here at the Division Communication School, where they learn wire, radio communications, and cryptonology. Yes, we came here for 6 weeks to learn all our trades. Many of the boys went crazy listening to the code, and many of them got stymied and got tired. And of course, we used to have the 5-minute break. Sergeant Devereaux taking one of those famous 5-minute breaks. Smoke 'em if you have 'em, they used to say. Back to class. Ah, yes. Here we go, one more time. Sergeant Oglesby, fellow from H Company. Ah, another man from Communications. Sergeant Brown, F Company. Sergeant Devereaux. And the boy that gave the passes out, the orderly at the room. This is our little garden next to the orderly room. Did you have a garden like this? Sergeant Day talking over with his subordinates what they're going to do that day, and here's Sergeant Devereaux saying, "Come on, let's go, it's time to eat." I said, "Hey, look at one of them airplanes going over. Look how fast they're going." We didn't see too many airplanes down there at that time period. Yeah, strange sights seeing airplanes in this neighborhood. Here's Paraguay and Kelly. Looking at the old trash bin next to the place where we used to take our showers. And here's some of the boys on working with the 253rd on bivouac. And here we are learning how to lay wire to each of the companies and how to supply radio communications from each one of the companies to the squad. And in order to learn the procedure, this is where we learn how to do it. And here's those famous magnolias from Mississippi. Beautiful flower. And here I caught one of the boys putting some trouble in the line. Ah, yes, they were the days. It was good training. We learned a lot. Here we see some of the comm officers from 253. Lieutenant Gill, Sergeant Mulcahy. And here's Cohen taking pictures of some of the men from the communications group. Sergeant Kennedy again. He says, "How do you like that one?" He said, "That wasn't so good. How about if I smile?" I says, "Try it." He says, "How's that smile?" And here we see Billy Schlegel. Yes, he's coming out. He just got his stripes. Very proud of the fact. And here comes Sergeant Chaska. He comes out to congratulate them. Yes, getting another stripe. Another man from F Company. Hey, let you know he was a sergeant. And we used to practice with the M1 rifle. How many of you held it and tried it before we went out into the field to fire them? You had to line up the bowl, line up the eye, and get it right on target. Here we are, shooting up in the air the penny out of the hand. Some of the barracks. Again, another 5-minute break. And more of the men from the various companies. Wish we knew who they all were. One of the reconnaissance aircraft. Here you can see the poles the men climbed. Yes, it was a 5-minute break at comm school. This is Division Communications School. And one day, General Harris come walking through the area, and I caught him and asked him if I could take his picture. He says, "Why, sure." Some of the tar paper shacks. Ah, yes, it looks like chow time one more time. Ah, yes. Some of the men, Ralph Sarasilla from G Company, killed just before we crossed the Cocha River. Paraguay trying out that 2-3 beer. Near beer is what I think they called it. Some of the men called it panther piss. This is the last march of the 63rd. This was taken just prior to going overseas. This was the first roll of color film that was sold publicly, and I had it sent to me. And this was just before we left Van Dorn, Mississippi for our trip overseas. Here we see the color guard and the officers passing behind them, getting into position. And this is the last retreat of the entire division prior to going overseas. Here you see the guidons coming on, the band playing in the background, and the men with their rifles and their bayonets fixed, passing in review. Yes, many of these men never return. And here we see the band now finishing up and following behind the division as it moves out, and some of the officers from the 63rd.
This is an American patrol across the Saar River. The place is Hanweiler, Germany, and it's the 16th of February, 1945. Notice the taut line that helps the men cross the Saar. We were landlubbers. We were the infantry, the foot soldiers. But sometimes we had to cross the waters. And here in Hanweiler, in a deserted area of bomb-damaged homes, we see the GIs of the 253rd bringing in German prisoners. The men are going house to house to be sure that Jerry has been taken. Now keep your eye being carried across the field. Now more house-to-house check to be sure that what we learned in Combat Village at Van Dorn was being put into practice in Hanweiler, Germany. Still waiting. And in a moment, you'll see the German prisoners being led by the white flag of surrender. Beautiful downtown Hanweiler isn't what it used to be. The 63rd Division's been here, and the prisoners are being gathered. And here they come in the final roundup. Shot of Hanweiler. white flag of surrender, and the German prisoners. They're following the men of the 253rd Regiment who captured them. Yes, this American patrol has accomplished its mission. Here come the prisoners with hands hanging high. Hitler's Supermen, conquered by the 253rd. And of course, the interrogation of prisoners begins for G2. How many men? What was their mission? What kind of equipment do they have? But every mission has its price to pay. The 63rd lost many men in combat. The price of crossing the Saar was paid dearly. The American patrol mission of the 63rd was a success. One boatload after another of assault boats being loaded with the enemy and with our own men, returning successfully across the Saar with their quarry in hand, are bringing their prisoners across the bridge at Sargamines. Notice the condition of the structural steel of the bridge. The parade, not the grand parade that Hitler promised, but the 63rd's parade of the prisoners marching down the main street of Sargamines. General Hibbs had promised blood and fire, and here at Hanweiler, Germany, it was administered by the 253rd. This is the German junction that the 255th Regiment of the 63rd is moving rapidly through on foot as they take another junction. No, it's not Tuxedo Junction, but it's an important link in the battle to beat the Germans on their own home ground. Notice the men on the double. Watch, one of the men drops a grenade. And he spots the grenade and returns to pick it up. Fortunately, the pin has not been pulled. Are you with the 255th at Mock Mule? Who are these men? Notice the bombed-out building. At that very moment, in the presence of the 255th Regiment, shown here, one of the three great regiments of the 63rd Division, were crossing a wooden footbridge over a stream at the edge of the town. The town was Furstenberg, Germany. And while the nation mourned, the men of the 63rd pressed on to bring the ultimate victory which Franklin Roosevelt had promised the American people, which Louis Hibbs had promised we would administer with blood and fire. Here are the soldiers advancing along along a narrow forest road. And here's a ham letting you know that he was glad to be there. Men from every section of the country, north and south, made the ranks of the 63rd a truly American division. City dwellers, farmers, men from the Mormon country, Utah, from California, from Florida, the deep south, Mississippi, Georgia, all merged into one fighting force. And a sample of it, right in the 255th Regiment, shown here, crossing over a narrow, shallow area of the Kosher River in the Fortenberg, Germany section. This little stream did not become a barrier. And again, they said we were foot soldiers, but we used the vehicles to see us through. Our country. We gladly fought for it in World War II. And we gather at Valley Forge in 1976 to salute our country on its bicentennial year. Not just in sentiment, but out of a commitment that the men who served with us, who did not return, are entitled to be remembered. And their struggle on land, sea, and in the air, by jeep, half-track, tank, brought to America a reassurance that we still care about being free. Later, on April the 15th, 1945, the Jewish soldiers of the 63rd Infantry Division held a prayer service in memory of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Soldiers of all faiths mourned the passing of the president. But here at Kunzelsau, Germany, the Jewish chaplain, Captain Aaron Kahn, is seen conducting memorial services for the president. From the 3 regiments, the field artillery, the cannon companies, from every segment of the 63rd assembled. And if Adolf Hitler had learned of what was taking place, he certainly would have burned earlier at the Reichschancellery. For this prayer service in memory of President Roosevelt took place in front of the Gestapo headquarters at Kunzelsau. With the 253rd Infantry, and this time it's the men of the 3rd Battalion. The place is Wollingen section of Germany, and the date, the 13th of April in 1945. Again, we see soldiers of the 3rd Battalion crossing the Cocher River in assault boats. Now the men have crossed the river and are walking across an open field. Some of the men are paddling along the Cocher River, and you will soon see the effect of some artillery shots on a blown-up portion of the bridge crossing the Cocher River. The men with the BARs and the M1s are in the front lines and in action for the 63rd. They're on their way to Mollingen. They're just a few kilometers away now. Yes, we are seeing quite a bit of water duty for an infantry outfit. Inch by inch, the 3rd Battalion is working its way towards Mollingen. 30-mile forced march is a memory, but today it's a necessity. Each portion of this intricate maneuver across the Cocher River was supported by the kind of firepower needed to protect the men. Another successful American patrol, this time the 3rd Battalion of the 63rd. Do you know this man? Tell us his name and you win a can of sea rations. Now the assault boats are completing their mission. The medics are on board. And notice the armaments. Of the 63rd on the 23rd of June 1945 were transferred to the 84th Division. Presiding at the ceremonies was our Brigadier General Ed Harris, who was commanding general of the 63rd Artillery and the Engineers. We see him bidding farewell to the men with low points. There's the general on the hill on your left. See the men carrying their loved barracks bags, which they love to blow her out of. They remember when General Harris greeted them. In the old days when the general, along with the commanding general, General Hitz, met the men, they used to say that Hitz would say, "Man above you is the greatest air force in the world. Behind you is the finest artillery assembled by man. In front of you are the best armored columns in the world." And then General Harris stood up and tell the new recruits, the new replacements, when you get up front, men, there's only one thing between you and the enemy. Your goddamn M1 rifle. Pleasant tasks, loading the barracks bags on the trailers for the trip to the 84th Division. Yes, we were all counting the points. How many stripes for overseas service? How many months in the service altogether? And we were looking forward to being demoted mobilized. Farewell. And now we see decorations being presented. Again, General Harris is presiding. And this time, the awards are being presented to the officers and enlisted men of the 254th Regiment. And the Silver Stars are being presented. Let's keep an eye on the official ceremony. Day for every man in the 63rd, and especially the men of the 254th. A formal parade at Craigledgeon. The captain of the 254th reads the citation. What's his name? Tell us. The division band passes in review. Are you a member of the band? Who's playing the big drum? Look carefully. Maybe the guidon of your company in the 254th will pass by right now. One-star flag being dipped as Old Glory passes by. We saw some of the men getting ready to go home. And now we see the meritorious plaque being given to the 763rd Ordnance Company at Bad Mergentheim, Germany. The date, the 29th of June, 1945. And presenting the award is Brigadier General Frederick M. Harris, the commanding general. The men of the 763rd Ordnance, proud of their service in making our combat tools ready for the great war which we had just won in Europe. General Harris watching the men pass in review. Yes, all of us were shielded by the men of the artillery, and we salute them. Was VE Day in Europe. But the honors to the 63rd came pouring in. The presidential citation presented to the 254th Infantry Regiment of the 63rd Division at Craigledgeon, Germany. In the center is Colonel Wheeler, who later became Chief of Staff under President Lyndon Johnson. And there is Colonel Warren. The 254th being honored by the Presidential Unit Citation. Here the captain of the unit reads the citation. Do you know this captain's name? Let us know. You can win a can of sea rations. General Harris advances with Colonel Wheeler to tie on the streamers to the 254th Regimental banner. Notice the blood and fire insignia on the helmet of the sergeant on your left. Who is that sergeant? Is he here today? Tell us your name. You in a can of sea rations. The Silver Star and the Presidential Unit Citation, the various honors, the return home aboard the Victory ships. Who can forget the demobilization at Fort Dix? Yes, the 63rd has fought hard. Honors richly deserved.
The 63rd Army Reserve Command, one of the largest in today's Army, carries on the proud heritage of the 63rd Infantry Division. The patch we wear today was born of blood and fire. We are entrusted with that legacy.
On December 9th, 1944, the 63rd landed in southern France, becoming part of Patch's 7th Army. The Raw Division soon earned its blood and fire motto in heavy fighting. In one operation, the Colmar Pocket, the 63rd slammed out of France, clearing the way for the entry into the Nazi homeland. The 63rd led the 7th Army advance across the Rhine onto German soil. The division was to take the brunt of the defenses of Omersheim, one of the fortress cities, but at last the city did fall to the 63rd in vicious fighting. Daily, the now battle-hardened veterans of the 63rd Division make good their promise to make the enemy bleed and burn. Every day, German units are continuing to take heavy casualties inflicted by the 63rd. Under this continuous Allied attack, the once invincible Siegfried Line is now breached by the 63rd, and the armor pours through. One by one, the German strongholds began to fall. Mannheim, Stuttgart, Augsburg, Munich. The Autobahn is now choked with German soldiers no longer goose-stepping but being led away to prisoner-of-war camps at Worms, another city now under the control of the 63rd. The hated Nazi flag falls for the last time. As the German resistance continues to crumble, the division slashes southeast across the rivers Yanks, the Danube, the Lech. Whole units now continue to surrender, even the leaders of the Reich. Hermann Göring is taken prisoner and is disarmed. The final symbol of hate of the Third Reich, designed to last 1,000 years, is destroyed, and the 63rd is given a break. Victory comes and a chance to be pulled from the lines. The 63rd has made good its promise to make the enemy bleed and burn, but it's been a hard-worn battle. It has had its cost. At last, in a ceremony to honor the fallen comrades, on September the 27th, 1945, the division is formally deactivated. That was 1945.
The 63rd was deactivated. but not forgotten. The legacy and tradition live on. The same patch that was born of blood and fire is worn proudly by 63rd ARCOM soldiers today. The hard-earned battle streamers set the standard for a new generation. As General George Washington said, "If we desire peace, it must be known that we are at all times ready for war." Our values haven't changed. The same sense of duty, responsibility, and valor in war that was the hallmark of the 63rd Division has been passed down to the 63rd ARCOM. Today, the soldiers of the 63rd ARCOM are a little younger. Some paid their dues in Korea and Vietnam. Others have yet to be tested. The commitment to our basic values remains the same. Our strength and willingness to fight for what we believe in is our best assurance of peace.